Hello, thank you for taking the time to look at this demonstration. I'm going to walk you through the stages of a landscape value study using pencil. I hope it informs and makes your drawings more enjoyable. This video has been speeded up by 300%. The principles in this quick demonstration using values can be applied to watercolor and oil painting. For now, the forms in your sketch should be very simple. Mark in simple shapes with no details, indicate forms and angles. There's no need to worry about perspective and no need for any detail. When you're happy with composition lines, you can mark in an overall value which separates the main shape blocks from the sky. The value should be quite light, around the 2 or 3 mark on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the darkest and 1 is the lightest. You can now start to vary the shapes into a darker value, making them more organic and describing what you're actually seeing. Simple is best. I can't emphasize that enough. Don't try to give the shapes any detail. Just indicate the major shadows to separate them from the lighter forms without trying to match their intensity. You should be looking at the landscape as you're drawing, but you should also try to internalize the scene, to draw what you're remembering from it without looking. This takes the emphasis off detail and moves it towards ambience, which is what you're trying to capture. Your impression of the scene from your mental image is what really gives the painting value, the drawing value, I should say. Accuracy is great, but it's very, very much overrated. That's the truth. It is just overrated. You're supposed to enjoy your work, and at the beginning, accuracy is very important for establishing reality. But when you become confident, you can throw that away. I mean, there's a certain amount of internalized understanding that you can simply allow to come to the foreground without your conscious mind getting involved. Hopefully you'll notice that I'm not using many lines. The pillars, for instance, are becoming visible due to the lines, not due to the lines that silhouette them, but the values that silhouette them. That's the negative space working for you. Perspective is important, but it's also created by the values more than the lines. The lines help, of course, but the intensity and lightness of the values will tell you which things are closest and which are furthest away. You'll also see more details on the things which are closest, whereas the things in the distance will become clumps of value. And although your eyes can see the details and the shadows in the real scene, when you focus on them, it's best to simplify. Squint your eyes and make the shadow areas one complete form. This conical hedge has a fall and a turn of light. I'll explain those terms properly later, just bear them in mind. When you are first learning to do this, it's a very good idea to work from photos. The complete scene is fixed and you can learn to negotiate with what you want to capture, and the values don't change due to a moving sun. A small sketch like this should take between 20 and 30 minutes, so the movement of the sun shouldn't affect where you are drawing when you are drawing from life. This one measures about 8 by 10 centimeters, so it's larger than a thumbnail and smaller than a normal drawing. The larger sketches will take a lot longer, of course, but practice will make you more efficient, especially when you use your visual memory. Ultimately, you should aim to work from nature. Photos can't be depended on, especially if you're working in color. There is a world of difference between what the camera can see and what the eye can see, and each person is unique, whereas most photos are pretty similar. Shadows are flat in photos, and you don't get to choose what you see. When you're confident, you should go out into nature and learn to discriminate and design based on what you're experiencing. And with enough experience, you'll enjoy it. Now I'm beginning to work on defining the darkest darks, but I'm not going to go straight into the final value. I'm working up to it with a value closer to 8 on the 1 to 10 scale, where 10 is your darkest. This gives me the option to create depth within the shadow areas later. Working on the fall of light area of this tree first. No details, just a sense of form. Still no details in the forms, but I'm laying in the darker shadows in the upper tree. The foliage makes an abstract, but it has a turn and fall of light, like a sphere. When an upper side on the top left is lighter and the lower right is darker. Bear a sphere in mind and you'll get a sense of the overall shape in terms of light and shadows. These are not the darkest darks in the tree's foliage. I'm just laying in a value that I can add the darkest over later. Now I'm back to the conical shrubbery. More turn and fall of light. It's lighter on the left than it is on the right and darker at the base. The light source comes from the left, so I'm indicating the shadows on the right. That's the turn, it's darker at the base than at the top, that's the fall. Now that I have a sense that the sketch is working, I start to darken my shadows. The shadows in the foreground at the moment are about a value of 8, so I'll have to go into the background shadows and darken them to the 10 to make them seem more generalized and further away. Foreground details have more details. I begin to separate the layers of values in the scene. Still not going for the darkest dark, just establishing more those layers of distance. More fall and turn of light, and some detail in the foreground objects. Now you can see when I darken that form at the back, the hedge, it will make the conical hedge leap forward. Still not going for the darkest darks here, just building up to it. Now you're beginning to see the real effects that the darkest darks have when it comes to the turn of light. As the darker darks become more emphasized, you get a better sense of distance, and the foreground seems to leap forward. The same principles apply when painting. You simply imagine the colors in terms of their values, but that's another story. Later, I'll make a recording of how expressive lines can also capture landscapes beautifully. Thank you for exploring this video. I hope it was useful. Please share it with your artistic friends. Thank you.